Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. It was the night before our wedding, and everyone was buzzing with excitement. My phone buzzed unexpectedly. An anonymous message appeared with the words, "You need to see this." Hesitant, I opened it. My stomach twisted as photos loaded. There he was, my fiancé, in bed with another woman. The photos were clear, unmistakable. My heart dropped. I stared at the screen, not sure if I was seeing the truth. How could this be real? I felt the walls closing in around me. My hands shook as I looked at the photos. Was this a prank? A cruel joke? The man I loved, the man I was about to marry, was tangled in someone else's arms. Every cell in my body screamed at me to deny it, to ignore the truth. But I couldn't. The proof was staring back at me, taunting me with the reality I never thought I'd face. Tears stung my eyes. How long had this been going on? Why didn't I see it? Panic surged through me, and I couldn't breathe. How could this happen? Why would he do this? He'd seemed so perfect. We'd been together for years. Everyone knew how in love we were. The wedding was planned, the venue booked. How could he betray me like this? I tried to shake off the sick feeling in my stomach and called him. My voice trembled. "Where are you?" I asked. His response was calm. "With the guys, why?" He had no idea, but I knew. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. His voice was too casual, too rehearsed. Something wasn't right. I could hear the deceit in his words, the desperation to cover up the truth. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say, but I had to confront him. My world was crumbling before me, and all I wanted was for it to be a bad dream. "Are you sure you're with the guys?" I asked, knowing the answer before it even left my lips. "Yes," he said, but I didn't believe him. The minutes felt like hours. I could feel the anxiety building inside me as I waited for his response. And then, just like that, I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent him one of the photos. My fingers hovered over the screen as I hit send, and it felt like my whole life was hanging in the balance. The weight felt unbearable, as if everything would come crashing down the moment he saw it. And then the reply came. "Where did you get this?" My heart raced as I stared at his message. Where did you get this? It was the first time he'd asked a question, but there was no apology, no hint of remorse. Just fear. His response told me everything I needed to know. He was guilty, and he was caught. The silence between us stretched for what seemed like eternity before I finally asked, "Is this how you want to start our life together?" He couldn't answer. He just kept typing, but the words never came. His next message came in broken sentences. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a mistake. Please don't leave me." I stared at the words. Was he really sorry? Was it truly a mistake? Or was I just another person in his life to deceive? His words felt empty. I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I wasn't sure I believed him anymore. How could I? How could I trust him after everything he'd just done? I felt cold, numb. I could feel the tears threatening to spill. I wanted to scream, to shout at him, but instead, I said nothing. My emotions were swirling: betrayal, anger, heartbreak. I had never felt so alone in my life. Here I was, standing on the edge of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and it was all falling apart. "I need space," I typed, my fingers shaking. "We'll talk tomorrow." But I knew, deep down, nothing would be the same after this. I couldn't sleep that night. I paced the room, running the events over and over in my mind. How could I have missed the signs? All the little things that didn't add up, the way he'd been distant lately, the late nights at work that never seemed to end. I had trusted him completely, never once questioning his loyalty. And now, I was left with nothing but doubt. I stared at the wedding dress hanging in the corner of the room, its pure white fabric now tainted with lies. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she? Why him? I needed answers, but part of me was terrified of what I might find. What if he'd been seeing her for months? What if they were in love? My heart clenched. I tried calling him again, my hands trembling as I hit dial. When he answered, there was a shakiness to his voice. "Are you okay?" he asked, but his concern felt forced, insincere. I couldn't do this anymore. The trust was shattered. I was a mess. My thoughts were all over the place, but one thing was clear. I couldn't go through with the wedding. Not like this. The weight of betrayal crushed me. He had lied to my face, and I had trusted him. I didn't know how to fix it, how to make the pain go away. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't marry a man who didn't value me enough to be honest. I walked over to the dress again, staring at it, thinking about how wrong everything had become. The next morning, he showed up at my door, looking disheveled and tired. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept either. He tried to pull me into his arms, but I recoiled. "I can't do this," I whispered. He looked confused. "What do you mean?" he asked, as if he didn't understand. How could he not understand? He had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and he still couldn't see it. "I know about her," I said, my voice trembling. "I know everything." His face paled as I spoke. I saw the guilt in his eyes, but there was something else too. Fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of the consequences. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It meant nothing. I swear. I shook my head, unable to process his words. "How long?" I asked, my throat tight. "A few months," he confessed, his face crumpling in shame. A few months? How had he kept this from me for so long? How could he betray me like this? I couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears fell freely, hot and heavy. "You lied to me," I said, barely able to speak through my sobs. "You promised me forever." He looked at me, his face contorted in anguish. "I know I messed up. Please, don't leave me. I'll do anything." His words meant nothing to me now. The man I had planned to marry was nothing more than a stranger. How could I ever trust him again after what he'd done? How could I spend my life with someone like him? I stood there, looking at him, but all I could see was the man I had trusted, the man who had shattered my heart. "Do you love her?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He froze. His hesitation spoke volumes. I don't know," he said quietly. "It was a mistake. I'm so sorry." That was it. I didn't need any more answers. I felt the final wall go up between us, a wall built on lies, deceit, and shattered trust. "It's over," I said firmly. "We're done." I watched him stand there, stunned. His mouth opened and closed as if he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. I felt nothing. It was as if all the love I'd ever felt for him had drained out of me in an instant. The wedding was supposed to be today, the day I dreamed of for so long. Instead, I was standing here, heartbroken, betrayed, and alone. The man I thought I would marry was a liar, and he didn't deserve me. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I'm calling off the wedding," I said, my voice stronger now. "I can't marry you after everything you've done." The look on his face was pure devastation. He fell to his knees, begging, "Please, don't leave me. I'll make it right. I swear I'll change." But it was too late. I couldn't forgive him. Not for this. Not after everything I had learned. There was no going back from this. "I'm sorry," I said softly, "but it's over." I turned away from him, the weight of the decision heavy in my chest. But deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't go through with the wedding, knowing what I now knew. The wedding guests were already arriving, waiting for the celebration that would never happen. I picked up my phone and texted my family. "It's over. The wedding's off." My fingers shook as I typed, but the words were necessary. They needed to know. It felt like my entire world had just fallen apart. I sat alone in my room, staring at the walls. I couldn't process everything. My mind was racing, replaying the moments leading up to this. I had always trusted him. I had believed in our love, in the future we were supposed to have. Now, all of that was gone. I felt empty. I thought about the wedding dress again, the one I would never wear. The dress that was meant for the happiest day of my life, now forever stained with betrayal. He tried to call me several times, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want to hear his voice. I didn't want to hear his apologies anymore. They meant nothing now. What was the point? He had already destroyed everything we had. Every promise, every future plan, every dream, gone. The love I thought we had was nothing but a lie. He had shattered my heart, and I couldn't pretend like everything was okay. I couldn't let him back in. I spent the next few hours pacing back and forth, trying to understand everything. How had I missed the signs? I couldn't stop questioning myself, replaying our entire relationship in my head. Had he always been this way? Was I blinded by love? I wanted to be angry at him, to shout and scream, but all I could feel was emptiness. The anger would come later, I knew that. But for now, I just needed to process the depth of the betrayal. My phone buzzed again. Another text from him. I read it, my hands trembling. I love you. I always have. Please don't do this. He was still trying, still reaching out. But how could I believe him now? How could I trust a word he said when he had destroyed me so completely? He didn't love me enough to be honest. He didn't love me enough to be faithful. I felt my heart hardening, closing itself off from him, from everything I thought I knew about us. I called my best friend, desperate for comfort. She picked up on the first ring, and I could hear the concern in her voice. What's going on? You're not at the venue. I could barely speak, my throat tight with emotion. He cheated on me. He's been seeing someone else. There was a long pause before she spoke, her voice soft. I'm so sorry. I'll be there. I'm coming over now. I didn't have to say anything else. She knew me better than anyone else, and I needed her. She arrived within minutes, holding me as I cried. I felt so weak, so broken, and yet her presence was a balm to my wounded soul. She didn't ask questions, just listened as I told her everything. How I had found the photos, how he had tried to apologize, how he begged me not to leave him. You deserve so much better, she said quietly. I nodded, but the words didn't make it any easier. How could I move on from this? How could I trust anyone again? The house was silent, save for the occasional sniffle or quiet sob. I couldn't bring myself to leave the room, to face anyone. My family had arrived at the wedding venue by now, wondering where I was. I texted my mom, telling her everything, apologizing for not being able to go through with it. She called me immediately, her voice trembling with shock and disbelief. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered. I could hear the heartbreak in her voice. As the day wore on, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I thought about the future we had planned together, the life we had dreamed of building, and now it was all gone. The man I was supposed to marry wasn't the person I thought he was. He wasn't the man I had fallen in love with. He had become a stranger, someone unrecognizable. I didn't know how to move forward, didn't know how to take the next step when my entire world had been shattered. Later that night, I heard a knock at the door. It was him. He had come to beg, to plead for a chance to fix things. He was holding flowers, but they felt hollow, empty. He looked at me with pleading eyes. Please, don't do this. I'll change. I swear. But his words were just that, words. Empty promises. I felt nothing but resentment. You've already shown me who you really are, I said quietly. And I can't be with someone like you. His face fell as I closed the door between us. The next few days were a blur. I didn't go out, didn't talk to anyone except my closest friends and family. The wedding was supposed to have been the happiest day of my life, but it had turned into the worst. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, unable to escape the feelings of betrayal and hurt that consumed me. It was hard to even look at the reminders of our plans, the invitations, the decorations, the dress. It all felt like a cruel joke. I spent hours thinking about the future. What was I going to do now? How would I move on from this? My trust had been shattered. My heart had been broken. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let this destroy me. I couldn't let him win. He had stolen my happiness, but he wouldn't steal my future. I had to rebuild, had to find a way to heal. But for now, all I could do was take it one day at a time, hoping that somehow I would find the strength to let go. It's been months now, and I've slowly started to heal. The pain is still there, but it's no longer as consuming as it once was. I've learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about trust, honesty, and respect. And I deserve all of that. I deserve someone who will value me, someone who will never betray me. The past is behind me now, and I'm moving forward. I've learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts. And I know I'll be okay, no matter what. Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you like the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.